So you feel like your English is not improving much. You've successfully moved from elementary to beginner, then to lower intermediate, and then to intermediate, but now you are stuck there. You can understand YouTube videos and your teacher, but you are still struggling with understanding movies and native speakers. You can definitely speak and communicate your message, but you feel that you are not fluent enough. You still hesitate and you are not confident with tenses, and so you feel shy. You can't remember new vocabulary, and you keep using the same vocabulary and expressions that you've been using for years. You feel that you are still motivated and you want to improve your English and get to the upper intermediate and advanced levels, but you don't know what to do in order to get there. Now, if you've had all of these problems and questions, then you've hit the intermediate plateau. See, when we usually think of levels of proficiency in English, we usually think of them this way, that is, as a straight progressive line upward from beginner to advanced, or like a staircase with each step requiring equal effort and time. Well, that's not usually the case with learning languages. Some people spend more time and others less time at one level or the other. Some people are fast learners of a language while others are slow. And it all, of course, depends on the time, effort, motivation, and resources you are willing to put into the learning and acquisition of the language. But in general, it has been noticed that the majority of English language learners reach a certain point where they stagnate. So instead of a straight upward line, learning a language is more like a curve where learning goes up and then flattens. Why? Because the rate of growth and development has stopped, often because of fatigue or boredom or loss of motivation, or because what is required to get to the next level is more demanding. In the worst case scenario, this can happen. You start to see a decrease in performance or a decline in skill. That is, your level, instead of going up, will start to go down. Now, the plateau effect, as it is called, does not only happen with languages, but in pretty much everything. This has happened to me, for example, in fitness and exercising. When I get overweight, which happens more often than I wish, I go on a diet and start exercising and running. In the 3 or 4 first months, everything is going great. I can see immediate results. I see myself losing weight and kilos every week. No, every day. My muscles start developing, and then by the 5th or 6th month, everything starts to slow down. My weight is the same for days and weeks, despite the fact that I'm still on a diet, still not eating sugar, still no bread, still running every day, still going to the gym, the whole thing. And to my horror, I even start to notice that I'm gaining kilos. What happens next, I'm sure that you've all experienced it. You get demotivated, you say this is not working, and then you stop the diet and the gym, and a few weeks later, you are back to the original weight. That's basically the story of my life. Okay, the reason you plateau in fitness is that your body, after some weeks, becomes accustomed to a certain stimulus and thus ceases to respond to it. Of course, it's the same with diet, where your body gets used to the absence of food, and so the effect is no longer the same as at the beginning. The solution to that in fitness is to change the workout by adding periods of rest, or changing the volume of exercises, or increasing or decreasing the weight used in strength exercises. Well, the same is required in learning a language. You gotta take your learning curve to the next level. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something different, but you can start with doing the same thing differently. So if you read short stories, it's now time to read novels. If you usually read silently, try now to sometimes read out loud. Instead of just reading, try now to listen to audiobooks. If you have developed the habit of watching movies with English subtitles, perhaps now it's time to remove the subtitles and just watch and listen. If you are used to listen to and understand mostly your teachers, try now to listen to a podcast in English. If you got used to listening only to American English, try to mix it up a little bit and listen to other accents and dialects like British and Australian English. If you are used to practice your speaking only in the classroom with your classmates, Now it's time perhaps to try to use your English outside the classroom. It can be with your friends, or in the public speaking events, or online over Zoom or Skype. Whatever you are doing now, try to take it up a notch so that it takes your English to the next level. There are two key factors that have helped me overcome the intermediate plateau: targeting and persistence. We start with targeting. First, identify your strengths and weaknesses. Where do you feel you are strong and confident and skillful, and where do you feel you are still struggling or lacking confidence? Like when I personally plateaued at intermediate, I was a student at the university. I was, I think, in the third or fourth year. I was strong in reading, vocabulary, and listening, but I was still not confident in speaking and writing. So mostly the productive skills. What took me to the next level is that I started teaching English. So I was forced to work on my public speaking, and I remember that I worked a lot with my learners on how to develop their writing, so that meant that I had to research and prepare lessons on writing, which indirectly improved my own writing. Look, don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be teaching for you. I'm not saying that go and become a teacher to improve your English. I'm saying identify your weaknesses and target them specifically in a way that suits you and forces you to work on them. This can be teaching or another job like translating, or preparing for a PhD entrance exam, or preparing an international language exam like the IELTS, or preparing for a job interview. You gotta find the vehicle that will motivate you to address the weakness that you have identified and work on it specifically. Perhaps it's a good idea to start your own YouTube channel if you are into filming and editing, so that you work on your speaking and pronunciation. And when you listen to yourself talking in the video, you can even notice your mistakes and even see your progress over time. So whatever you are gonna do, just make sure that it's something that you want to do, so that you keep doing it. Which takes us to the second factor that I think is important in overcoming the plateau effect, which is persistence. This itself means two things: patience and perseverance. You gotta be prepared to work on your targeted weaknesses on the long term. You gotta be prepared to no longer see immediate results like when you were a beginner or a lower intermediate. The improvements are sometimes going to be so small that you don't even notice them. But believe me, they are there. Like I still remember very well how I developed my listening when I was a beginner. It started with sounds and then words and phrases and small sentences, and every day there was a new win, a new progress. When I hit the intermediate plateau, my listening was good, but it still needed work. I worked on my listening over years and years, which meant listening to something in English every single day. Now I can understand what I listened to effortlessly. When did that exactly happen? I don't know. There is no one specific time or activity that I did that took it to the next level. It's just an accumulation of constant exposure to the language, of noticing, of learning about accents, of doing exercises in listening comprehension, etc., etc. It's all of these different things combined together over a long period of time which made me get out of the intermediate plateau, and it goes the same for all the other skills. See, most people feel demotivated when they reach the intermediate plateau. They feel like now they'll not see results and that progress is gonna be slow and boring. I disagree. I think that you should feel happy when you feel you've reached this stage. I think you should feel proud of yourself, because now you've truly learned all the basics and essentials of the English language, and you've worked hard to achieve that. Now that you've reached this level, the trick is to change your expectations and your way of learning, because you are about to enter into the most exciting stage, that of reaching the top. The top that you can now see, the top that you couldn't see when you were a beginner, that seemed so far away when you were starting out. Now that you've plateaued, it's there. the peak of the mountain, and you will have now just to be more focused, more determined, more resolved to achieve your goal. Have a good one, and peace.